Imagine this. You're crowned King of England. You get the shiny ceremony, the anointing, the crown itself. People bow. Trumpets blare. Chroniclers write down your name like you've officially made it. Now imagine you go back to your room afterward, and you still have to ask your dad for spending money. Because that's the story today. A king who was crowned king, but never really got to rule anything. A royal title with the authority permanently set to demo mode. Today on Royal Idiots, we're talking about Henry the Young King, the tournament superstar, the medieval celebrity, the crown-wearing professional athlete, and the heir who tried to turn a kingdom into a personal brand before personal brands even existed. Welcome to Royal Idiots, the podcast where we explore the most powerful bad decisions in history. I'm your host, Melissa, and today we're looking at the life of Henry the Young King, the King of England who didn't actually get to be King of England. To understand Henry's story, we have to drop into the 1100s, into the world of the Angevin Empire. And yes, empire is the right vibe here, even if it wasn't a single neat country with tidy borders. Picture a map where power is stitched together by inheritance, marriage, and force. England on one side of the Channel, big chunks of Western France on the other. Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine through marriage. It's not one nation-state. It's more like a family business with castles. At the center of this business is one of the most driven, capable, and famously intense rulers of the Middle Ages, Henry II of England. Henry II wasn't just King of England. He was also Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou by birth, and through his marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine, he effectively gained influence over one of the richest and most culturally powerful regions in Europe. And if that sounds like a lot, it was. This wasn't a chill, ceremonial arrangement. It required constant travel, negotiation, intimidation, and, when necessary, war. Henry II spent much of his life in motion, trying to keep his territories coherent and his nobles scared enough to behave. Now, here's the thing about medieval rulership. Succession was a constant anxiety. Kings didn't just worry about enemies outside the realm. They worried about ambitious nobles, warring relatives, and, most of all, what happens when the king dies. So rulers looked for ways to secure the transition. One option, used in different forms across Europe, was co-kingship. You crown the heir while the current king is still alive. In theory, it's brilliant. Everyone knows who's next. The heir becomes familiar to the public and to the political elite. Rebellious lords have less excuse to scramble for advantage when the old king dies. In practice, it can become a disaster. Because you might accidentally crown a second king, who then starts wondering why he's not allowed to do king stuff. Our main character, Henry the Young King, was born in 1155. He was the eldest surviving son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. And from the beginning, his life is defined by one word: expectation. He was the heir to an extraordinary patchwork of lands. He grew up in a household where politics was oxygen, where the adults around him weren't just parents and tutors, but operators, people who understood power and knew how quickly it could be taken away. And he was raised in extreme luxury. Not nice clothes and good food luxury. More like a court built to radiate wealth luxury. This is the medieval top 1%, except the 1% owns castles and has private armies. He was also charming. The sources consistently paint him as likable, charismatic, and generous, the kind of prince people wanted to root for. But there's a catch. Henry the Young King was trained more like a noble celebrity than a governing executive. His world celebrated public displays of magnificence, lavish clothing, grand feasts, and especially tournaments. And in the 1100s, tournaments weren't just friendly jousts in a list field with polite applause. They were brutal and chaotic. Think of them like a mashup of sport, warfare training, and social climbing. Tournaments were where knights built reputations, gained followers, and got noticed. Prestige mattered. Being seen mattered. The performance of greatness could create real political influence. Now let's talk about the key moment that sets this whole story in motion. Henry the Young King got crowned, while Henry II was still very much alive and absolutely not interested in surrendering actual authority. In 1170, Henry II had his teenage son crowned King of England. It was a major moment, meant to lock in the succession. Except the crowned son did not receive a real share of governing power. No independent revenue stream. No real administrative control. No, here's your region, run it, learn the job. Instead, he got the title and the ceremony, but the levers of the state stayed firmly in his father's hands. So Henry the young king existed as a walking contradiction. Officially a king, practically a dependent. And you can almost hear the awkward conversations. "Father, I'm the King of England." "Yes, dear." "So, I can appoint officials." "No." "Command armies." "No." "Spend treasury money." "Absolutely not." "Could I maybe have some money for king expenses?" "Here's your allowance." That dynamic, crown without control, turns out to be corrosive. Henry the young king wanted the lifestyle of kingship. And to be fair, he'd been raised to believe it was his destiny. He had a court. He had companions. He had an image to maintain. He couldn't just sit quietly and wait for his father to die, because waiting quietly isn't how you stay relevant in medieval politics. So where did he go to be a king, if he couldn't actually govern? He went to the tournament circuit. This is where Henry becomes, frankly, the most famous tournament knight in Europe. He travels. He competes. He spends huge sums. He surrounds himself with celebrated fighters. He lives the life of a medieval rock star, except the instruments are lances and the tour schedule is across France. And it works, at least in the short term. He becomes admired. People talk about his generosity, about the splendor of his entourage, about how he embodies knightly ideals. But it's also incredibly expensive. Henry the young king's identity becomes fused with constant public display. And to keep that going, he needs cash. A lot of it. Paying knights, hosting events, rewarding supporters. These things didn't run on compliments. So the crowned king keeps coming back to the same problem. He has the title, but not the resources. And resources are power. Which brings us to the question at the heart of this story. What happens when you crown someone and then treat them like a decorative accessory? You create a rival. Even if you didn't mean to. And this brings us to the moment that defines Henry the young king's story. Instead of accepting a ceremonial role and patiently waiting, Henry chose the dangerous option. He turned his frustration into open rebellion against his father. Let's set the stage for the Great Rebellion of 1173 to 1174. Henry II had multiple sons. And not just sons, sons with ambitions, egos, and their own circles of advisors. There's Richard, who will later become Richard the Lionheart. There's Geoffrey. There's John, who will later become King John, yes, that King John. On top of that, there's Eleanor of Aquitaine, their mother, one of the most formidable political figures of the era, who had her own interests in how Aquitaine was managed and how her children were positioned. Henry II's approach to governing was strong central control. Efficient, effective, and infuriating if you were a noble who wanted more autonomy or a son who wanted a slice of the empire. So tensions weren't hard to find. They were baked in. The young king's grievance was simple. He was crowned, but he didn't have real authority. He wanted lands to govern and income to match his status. And he wanted recognition that wasn't just ceremonial. Meanwhile, nobles in France and England had their own motives. Any time a powerful ruler looks even slightly vulnerable, factions line up with suggestions, very helpful suggestions, about how the situation might be improved. So the rebellion forms like this. Personal frustration merges with political opportunity. Henry the young king effectively becomes the public face of a coalition against Henry II. Not because the young king is a brilliant strategist, he's not really known for that, but because he's the perfect symbol, the rightful heir, the wronged king, the charismatic figurehead. And he has allies. His brothers get involved. Various nobles join the movement. The King of France is happy to see Henry II stressed and distracted. In a world where diplomacy is often warfare with nicer clothes, supporting your enemy's family drama can be a winning move. Now, you might think, if you're going to rebel against Henry II, you should probably have a clear plan, tight coordination, and the kind of logistics that keep an army fed and moving. That's the smart option. The bad option is to assume that your father, one of the most politically experienced rulers in Europe, is going to fold because you're upset and have a coalition. Henry the young king goes with the bad option. The rebellion kicks off, and it spreads across different regions. But it's not a single clean campaign. It's multiple uprisings, multiple sieges, multiple local conflicts, messy, scattered, and hard to synchronize. And Henry II responds the way you'd expect Henry II to respond. Quickly, forcefully, and with a mix of military pressure and political maneuvering. He moves. He negotiates when it helps him. He punishes when it helps him. He isolates opponents. He picks off threats. He does what competent rulers do when their family tries to overthrow them. He refuses to panic, and he makes it expensive for everyone involved. The young king, for all his fame, doesn't display the kind of command presence that turns a rebellion into a successful transfer of power. He's more the emblem than the engine. And eventually, the rebellion collapses. So what did Henry the young king win from staking everything against his father? Not much. Some reconciliation. Some promises. But fundamentally, Henry II remains in charge. The political system remains what it was, the father holding the real authority, the son still wearing the crown like a very expensive hat. Unsurprisingly, this decision had consequences. For one thing, it poisoned trust inside the dynasty. Even by medieval standards, where family betrayal is practically a genre, this kind of rebellion leaves scars. It also demonstrated a dangerous reality. Crowning an heir early does not automatically stabilize a kingdom. It can do the exact opposite if the heir is left powerless and restless. And then there's the broader cost. Rebellions aren't abstract. They burn money, they destroy property, and they pull local lords into cycles of retaliation. Even when the king wins, the realm pays. But Henry the young king's consequences weren't just political. They were personal. After the rebellion fails, he returns to what he knows: tournaments, travel, lavish spending, and building his legend as the ultimate night king. He's still famous. Still admired. Still the crowned King of England in title. But he's also trapped. Because unless Henry II chooses to hand over real authority, which he's not eager to do, there's no path for the young king to become what his title implies. And if he tries rebellion again, that's betting your life on the same playbook that just failed. Which leads to a strange kind of limbo. A crowned monarch who can't settle into governing, so he keeps chasing prestige elsewhere. Then, suddenly, the story ends. In 1183, Henry the young king falls ill, dysentery. A reminder that medieval life could be ended by something as unglamorous as contaminated water and a brutal infection. He dies at 28 years old. 28. The crowned king dies before he can ever inherit actual power. And now the whole succession picture shifts. Because the heir is gone, and the lineup changes. Richard becomes the main successor. John's long-term prospects shift. The family dynamics, already explosive, rearrange around a new center. So what is Henry the young king's legacy? Despite the chaos and the rebellion, he left a lasting mark on the cultural imagination of the time. He became a symbol of chivalric glamour, a prince who embodied the tournament world and the ideal of the generous, celebrated knight. That's the mythic version. The other version is more sobering. He's an example of what happens when symbolism replaces substance. When someone is given a title without a job, an image without real responsibility, and is then expected to sit quietly while everyone treats them like the future. His life also offers a window into the Angevin political structure. This giant, cross-channel complex of territories held together by one family's grip. It shows how fragile that grip could be, especially when internal rivalries mixed with external opportunism. And it highlights how medieval tournaments weren't just sport. They were politics. A way to build alliances, acquire followers, and manufacture legitimacy. Henry didn't just compete, he used the tournament circuit as his alternative kingdom. But the core contradiction remains. A king who never ruled, because the true king refused to share. Now it's time for our signature segment, the Royal Idiot Verdict. So how should we judge Henry the young king? He wasn't a monster. He wasn't uniquely cruel. He wasn't a clueless fool in the day-to-day sense. In fact, He seems to have been charming, admired, and genuinely beloved by many contemporaries. But the show is called Royal Idiots for a reason, and we're here to look at the decision-making under the crown, or in this case, under the crown that came with no steering wheel. On the royal idiot scale, I'm giving Henry the young king questionable judgment. Here's why. He was placed in an almost impossible position. Crowned early, denied real authority, and surrounded by a culture that rewarded spectacle, spending, and knightly glory. That's a recipe for frustration. And his frustration makes sense. But his response, rebellion against one of the most capable rulers of the era, was a massive gamble without the strategic foundation to pull it off. He confused fame for leverage and ceremony for control. When the rebellion failed, he was left with the same problem, only now with less trust and fewer options. So yes, he's sympathetic. But also, he chose the kind of headline-making move that feels powerful in the moment and leaves you worse off afterward. Next time on Royal Idiots, we'll explore the story of another ruler whose decisions helped change the course of a kingdom in ways nobody planned, except maybe their enemies. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast and share it with a fellow history fan. And if you ever find yourself fantasizing about titles and glory, just remember Henry the young king, crowned King of England, and still waiting for his dad to hand him the keys.